What's up, everybody? This is ultimately where I was going with the beef between Nick, Candace, and Tucker. Not on here picking sides like many people are doing, but I kind of wanted to point out how this epitomizes everything wrong with our social media culture. What started out as a slightly uncomfortable interview for Nick and Candace quickly turned into he's a Fed, he's intelligence. It was all a setup, they ambushed me, and it's just one hurt ego overreaction after another. Then there's a rift and everybody's picking sides, and that's all it takes. Now it's red versus blue, figuratively speaking. Where 2 weeks ago, these were three of the biggest names out there exposing the gray activity. But now one's a narc, the other one's a snitch, and it's that way for hundreds of thousands of people. With social media, you can present a very one-sided, narrow view of something that makes sense within the context presented, and a lot of people will never consider it from a different point of view after that. And I'll probably talk more about it at the end of the video. I want to keep this short, but it made me think of Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity. Because right now, it's not so much a battle of beliefs and ideals as it is just combating stupidity. And it is so easy to keep dividing everybody by these tiny fractures. Like in this case, where all three of them have done a lot of work exposing new people to Yeezy in our government and military, which should be a common bond for everybody that follows all three of them. Now there's a rift and it's red versus blue. Now the WWE sideshow outweighs the real issue. So this is Dietrich Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity. It's written on the 10th anniversary of the Austrian painter's ascension to the chancellorship of Germany. And he's writing this in terms of a hive mind mentality taking over the country. But it applies to both the hive mind and how easily people can be divided. Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice. One may protest against evil, it can be exposed, and, if need be, prevented by use of force. Evil always carries within itself a germ of its own subversion in that it leaves behind in human beings at least a sense of unease. Against stupidity, we are defenseless. Neither protests nor the use of force accomplish anything here. Reasons fall on deaf ears. Facts that contradicted one's prejudgment simply need not be believed. In such moments, the stupid person even becomes critical, and when facts are irrefutable, they are just pushed aside as inconsequential, as incidental. In all this, the stupid person, in contrast to the malicious one, is utterly self-satisfied and, being easily irritated, becomes dangerous by going on the attack. For that reason, greater caution is called for than with a malicious one. Never again will we try to persuade the stupid person with reasons, for it is senseless and dangerous. And I see this with almost every subject on the internet. Not everybody does it, but for some people, they see something that makes a little bit of sense, and then they keep adding more and more to it. And then if you tell them that the original concept was wrong to begin with, it doesn't matter now. Facts that contradict one's prejudgment simply need not be believed. But now that person is utterly self-satisfied in their new belief system, and they will attack anything that goes against that. If we want to know how to get the better of stupidity, we must seek to understand its nature. This much is certain, that it is in essence not an intellect defect, but a human one. There are human beings who are of remarkably agile intellect, yet stupid, and others who are intellectually quite dull, yet anything but stupid. We discover this, to our surprise, in particular situations. The impression one gains is not so much that stupidity is a congenial defect, but that under certain circumstances, people are made stupid, or that they allow this to happen to them. We note further that people who have isolated themselves from others or who live in solitude manifest this defect less frequently than individuals or groups of people inclined or condemned to social ability. And so it would seem that stupidity is perhaps less a psychological than sociological problem. It is a particular form of the impact of historical circumstances on human beings. a psychological concomitant of certain external conditions. Okay, so some people are of remarkably agile intellect, yet stupid. It's kind of like the book smarts versus street smarts thing. We've got all kinds of really bright kids going off to college right now that believe every little thing that's being taught to them, and why wouldn't they? That's the teacher, the person of authority. And also, they are just memorizing all of this stuff instead of learning why things are that way. Then they become experts in a very narrow field, but then in everything outside of that, they are just completely lost. But the dangerous part of this is they feel they are extremely educated, and therefore they think they know more than people who are just actually smart and not educated. And I think that's one of our biggest problems today in the socio-political world. Then you have people that are intellectually quite dull, yet anything but stupid. I grew up around all kinds of old country boys. Some of them are smart, some of them not so much. But even the not so bright one can put two and two together when they hear that we're using electric vehicles now to save the planet by burning less fossil fuels. And they'll say, yeah, but aren't you burning coal to produce that electricity? Yet they read at a third grade level. Some people are really smart, yet really easy to fool, while others aren't that bright, but you're not going to put anything past them. Then Bonhoeffer notes that people who spend more time by themselves and actually thinking for themselves are far less prone to this hive mind than people who live in a more social setting like our education system. So this is more of a culture problem than intelligence or psychological. Upon closer observation, it becomes apparent that every strong upsurge of power in the public sphere, be it of a political or of a religious nature, infects a large part of humankind with stupidity. It would even seem that this is virtually a sociological, psychological law. The power of the one needs the stupidity of the other. The process at work here is not that particular human capacities, for instance, the intellect, suddenly atrophy or fail. Instead, it seems that under the overwhelming impact of rising power, humans are deprived of their inner independence and, more or less consciously, give up establishing an autonomous position toward the emerging circumstances. The fact that the stupid person is often stubborn must not blind us to the fact that he is not independent. In conversation with him, one virtually feels that one is dealing not at all with a person, but with slogans, catchwords, and the like that have taken possession of him. He is under a spell, blinded, misused, and abused in his very being. Having thus become a mindless tool, the stupid person will also be capable of any evil and at the same time incapable of seeing that it is evil. This is where the diabolical misuse lurks, for it is this that can once and for all destroy human beings. A lot of people feel a huge need to fit in and be respected by their peers. So even if they believe something completely insane, they're going to go along with it just to fit in. And this is used against us on a huge scale in the political world with all the slogans and, it was my body, my choice all the way up until 2020. And then it became all about women's rights after that because, well, you no longer have the right to decide what's right for your body. And millions of people just rolled from one thing to another without ever considering the hypocrisy of it. They just know that's what everybody else is doing now, and how can this many people be wrong? And now they'll fight tooth and nail with you about their new belief system that they don't even realize they just changed. Yet at this very point, it becomes quite clear that only an act of liberation, not instruction, can overcome stupidity. Here we must come to terms with the fact that in most cases, a genuine internal liberation becomes possible only when external liberation has preceded it. Until then, we must abandon all attempts to convince the stupid person. Yeah, so they're never going to sit down and rationalize things for themselves. It's only if they see a change externally, and then it's monkey see, monkey do. This state of affairs explains why, in such circumstances, our attempts to know what the people really think are in vain, and why, under these circumstances, This question is so irrelevant for the person who is thinking and acting responsibly. The word of the Bible, that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, declares that the internal liberation of human beings to live the responsible life before God is the only genuine way to overcome stupidity. But these thoughts about stupidity also offer consolation in that they utterly forbid us to consider the majority of people to be stupid in every circumstance. It really will depend on whether those in power expect more from people's stupidity than from their inner independence and wisdom. And unfortunately, we now live in a world where the powers that be rely on the groupthink stupidity much more than anyone's inner independence and wisdom. In the 1970s, psychologist Carlos Cipolla developed the 5 laws of stupidity, and he warns of spontaneous mob mentality and that we will always underestimate how many there are in a group. Stupid people are dangerous and damaging because reasonable people find it difficult to imagine and understand unreasonable behavior. An intelligent person may understand the logic of a malicious person. His actions follow a pattern of rationality. But the stupid creature will harass you for no reason, for no advantage, without any plan or scheme, and at the most improbable times and places. You have no rational way of telling if, when, how, or why the stupid creature attacks, because the stupid person's actions do not conform to the rules of rationality. It follows that we are generally caught by surprise by the attack. We cannot mount a rational defense because the attack itself lacks any rational structure. Non-stupid people constantly forget that at all times and places and under any circumstances, dealing with or associating with stupid people always turns out to be a costly mistake. Yet our naivete, compassion, and mercy for these stupid creatures may lead us to put them in positions where they can exercise authority over others. We enable them to hurt themselves and others. We hope to give them a sense of self-worth that will overcome their stupidity. We think it's an issue of education or life experience that they're victims of circumstance and not innately stupid. Thus, we help them rise to power, as with the H-Man and Stalin, even allowing them to make our regulations and laws and to enforce them. But in truth, this never accrues to the welfare of a society. Instead, it leads to its downfall. This is as true in the church as in the world. So those who would lead must first demonstrate they can manage their own households well. They must make intelligent choices that benefit others as well as themselves, ethical choices, showing that they are servants of all. Yeah, I've unfortunately done this all the time. There's people that I'm trying to be rational with and explain things out, and eventually I just have to accept, okay, there's no getting through to them. I had a guy get really mad at me over these photos that the creator themselves said were AI and therefore not real, and they still insisted they were real. And every time I'm in a situation like that, they are not simply trying to lay out their side of the story. It's always a full frontal attack. And now I'm stupid, closed-minded, been working for the Brotherhood the whole time and all this stuff, even though they've been watching my channel for years and I've shown them all kinds of stuff. That's all out the window now. And that's what I was pointing out with this whole internet beef. I had a whole segment recorded for that and accidentally deleted it, so I'll just explain it this way. This is exactly what happened with the whole Tartaria inheritors idea. It started out as there's no construction photos of the World's Fair, which there were. They were always there, just if nobody actually looked for them. And then everybody started piling stuff on top of that foundation, saying this was ancient, magnificent stone architecture. And then if you tell somebody, hey, the whole core of your belief here was wrong from the beginning. Those are not stone buildings. They are wood and steel framed with a stucco plaster over the top of it, which is why they burned down. Stone buildings wouldn't have went up like that. But now somebody's explained how they had Photoshop before cameras were ever invented, and all of this circumstantial evidence that proves nothing on its own. But since they piled it on top of their core belief, which turned out to be wrong to begin with, now they'll argue with you all day. You will never convince them anything otherwise, no matter how much evidence you present. There's just no arguing against that. There's no educating anyone out of it. This is now a religious belief for hundreds of thousands of people. And, that I wouldn't call so much stupidity as stubbornness. Because, hey, if you don't know, you don't know. And people present very convincing evidence on the internet of something. And then people say, well, if this many people believe this, then how could it be wrong? And in that case, it can be the opposite of a societal problem, because the individual will dedicate hours and hours of research time to confirming their new belief system. So I don't know. If you just heard something that's brand new to you and you're about to embark on a lifelong journey of learning about that subject, make sure what you began with was actually solid. And I bet I got all kinds of people mad at me now for saying that about Tataria. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.